I don't think there is anything that can stop Bitcoin. Before Bitcoin, there were no such thing comparable to it. This is the first digital coin that's absolutely secure and cannot be copied. I'm glad that Bitcoin exists, and I'm glad that about all the projects in the ecosystem. They're getting more and more, especially since COVID. I think there was almost an explosion of new projects and new providers and new companies in the ecosystem. Does Bitcoin need political involvement? Absolutely not. No crazy idea is off the table. Anything can happen. Bitcoin will change society to be more fair. I'm working for Coinfinity since 2022. With my company before that, we did a project together. There I founded a company. It was a spin-off of an Austrian company from a so-called blockchain lab. And we wanted to bring Bitcoin to the gambling industry. And therefore, in the initial phase, we looked for a partner, and that was Coinfinity at the time. But afterwards, we founded a Bitcoin broker in Liechtenstein.
Interesting. But you
Coinfinity was founded in 2014 by Max Tertinek and a friend of him. And was the first broker in Austria. I think even a month before Bitbanda or after, I don't know, it was very in the same time. I'm responsible for the product development, currently mainly the web portal, our app, and all our products. CEO is still Max Tertinek. We have another CEO, a co-CEO, so to say, Stefan Grill.
You also do ATMs, or is that how you started with Coinfinity? Like you started as an exchange?
Coinfinity started with an ATM, actually. If I remembered correctly, I wasn't there at the time. I only know the stories Max is telling. They had an ATM and an office, basically, and the people came by and they talked about Bitcoin and explained stuff. And later on, there came the platform where you could buy and sell Bitcoin. And the ATM business was split off into a sub-company. Also for regulatory reasons, because handling with cash is also a little bit different than with bank transfers. And I don't even know what year this was, but I think it was 2016, 17. I don't know, really.
It's super interesting. I heard that Coinfinity, you can even go to the office there locally in Graz, and you can buy Bitcoin like on a front desk from a recent guest. I heard that.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have our front office. We just recently looked at the stats. I think it was around 1,000 people visited our office. And it's everything. It's from people who just came by to use the ATM we have there. It's people who basically never heard of Bitcoin and they want to buy it. So there's a whole range of visitors we do have there. Also, just sometimes we have some people coming by for a coffee talking about Bitcoin. That's also okay.
I love that. They're coming by, buying some Bitcoin and coming for a coffee. I love that. Really cool. One thing before we get into the topic with Bitcoin as money, I want to applaud Coinfinity to sticking with Bitcoin only. As you said, right around the same time with Bitbanda, they started and they did all the other coin also. I'm amazed actually how many Bitcoin only exchanges there are in the German speaking area. And I got to know that it's not normal. Like there are a lot of regions in this world that are not as good covered with Bitcoin only exchanges as the German speaking area.
Unfortunately,
yeah, unfortunately. And I even asked my community, which I was super surprised, do you have any altcoins? Like you have Bitcoin, but like, do you have any altcoins next to that? And around 45%, I think, like around 2,000 people voted on that, and like 45% that watch my channel have altcoins next to it. Like the Bitcoin only thing is even on a Bitcoin only channel not that presented. It's kind of fascinating to see.
Strange, yeah, but people like to gamble.
Yeah, that was actually the biggest comment that I got. Yeah, like I have Bitcoin, but I also try to get more Bitcoin with like 2% or 5% of my stack with altcoins, which I'm like, invest that time to provide for the community and try to gain and therefore a bigger Bitcoin stack in producing something, a real world asset, a service, something of value, and then getting paid in Bitcoin for that. That's hope for me at least a better invested time. So now for the topic of Bitcoin as money, you touched on it before we started recording, that we have the institutions now in, and now people say like, oh, has it failed as money? How do you see that?
I think because I'm a big optimist, recently I heard the phrase Bitcoin failed as money. We all know about the functions money should have, and the one argument would be we are in the store of value phase still. And on the other hand, I would say there is maybe a small increase, but I see a lot of merchants using Lightning, despite all the naysayers. But it's still early. On the other hand, I would say starting with the ATF and Michael Saylor and all the crazy things he's doing right now. And to be honest, the last thing, I didn't quite understand what was going on there. Yeah. So I'm wondering how long this will go on. And compared to the people who really would use sound money, in developing lands, when you don't have access to banks and all the stuff, we know it, So those are the two poles for me. And to be honest, I'm not happy about Michael Saylor. I'm also not happy about the ETFs, It's increasing the price, fine, but that's not the end goal,
Is it maybe, like as you said, it's just the phase that we're currently in? It's also super interesting because they are basically playing that fiat game and trying to get as much money into their own kind of wallets with that fiat games, and kind of pushing the Bitcoin adoption forward on a store of value side, but nothing for the medium of exchange side, which is an interesting discussion. Do you see that as a risk of people forgetting that Bitcoin is actually money and they are seeing it only as an asset?
I think, of course, because if that's the narrative that is pushed, in the public, I think that the people will get used to it and don't think about the money part anymore. That's the same discussion we are already always having about self-custodying your coins or using a custodian. Some people are not good with new technologies. So it would be better for them to use a custodial service. Maybe it's really depending on your use case and your own personal level and what you're planning to do. I think it would be great if everybody studies Bitcoin and lives after the let's call it the Bitcoin ethics. But if we reach, or let me say, when we reach a level where this is big enough, obviously the game theory is playing out. We even see this at nation states now. From that aspect, I don't think there is anything that can stop Bitcoin except we ourselves. If the Bitcoiners stop Bitcoining, and if humanity doesn't, if the pain to change our money system is not big enough, that we get to switch to the whole money standard to Bitcoin, then basically Bitcoin will not go away. It will always be there, I think, because there is a hardcore group that won't give up on it. And that's awesome. I think I'm part of that too. But how do we 51% attack our money system on a worldwide scale? And how long does this take? So maybe we won't get to this point in our lifetime. Maybe it takes another 2 or 3 generations. Obviously, we as Bitcoiners would love to see more change in a shorter time frame. But I think the shorter the time frame, desto more pain is involved. If you think about, if you look at Austrian economics and the theories there, if it would be possible to switch the whole world with a tennis-like snap, I think the effects would not be good. I think this has to be a slow process, and it will take time. And a lot of us won't see the end of it, yeah? Or at least the bigger changes on the path of Bitcoin.
There's a big advantage of a slow dying of the fiat system. I always compare it with the Titanic. If the Titanic sinks in like half an hour, most people will drown really quickly because it's really cold out there, and will not be able to get on the lifeboats because the lifeboats also need kind of time to get there. We I don't know if Bitcoin would, like, it would be, it's an interesting thought experiment. Like, what if the fiat system actually crashes tomorrow completely, and 8 billion people now have to use Bitcoin and Lightning and all the infrastructure that is right now there? There's probably also a lot of technical issues that we run into if it goes like really quickly, probably not even possible, or like with a lot of growing pains in the next few months. So I think it's good if the fiat system dies out slowly, but I see the fiat system dying out quickly for some reason. It's like when you see all the things going on with inflation, with government spending, you're like, how can this go on for another 20 years? Like, it's hard to imagine that being on for, it's already hard to imagine that it's been 50 years since the US dollar basically existed, euro a little bit less, I think like 20 or 30 years what the euro is now there. And it's BD valued like 90, 80, 95%, depending on what metrics you're using. So it's already kind of dead, but we're still using it, and people still think it's safe and it's still a great, great money, which is kind of shocking for me, honestly.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you. I think it was about 15, 14 when I read the first book of Hayek. It was because of my mother, because she was a teacher and we had a lot of books at home. Not that I get it at the time, but I knew that there was something off with the system right back then. I remember a story my mother told me. I was a little boy, I think about 9, 10 or whatever. And where we lived, right on the other side, there was a shop. And there was from my point of view, a homeless person always going through the trash behind the shop. And I was wondering and asking the question, why does he have to do that? Now I explained to a little child why this is necessary and what all the stuff that is going on in the world. Yeah, it's quite a complex thing. But don't get started about taxes, but when you talk about inflation, why do we need it? I never heard a clear answer on that, why it would be necessary. And I say, it's basically theft or a hidden tax, let's say it that way. And I think it's a little bit because of laziness and because of education, or educational system. I really don't remember learning anything about economics in school, at the university, especially about Austrian economics. There were only a few people thinking about this and talking about this. That's one thing that Bitcoin brought for me. It brought back Austrian economics, which I find quite cool. Also because I see a lot of young people reading books again. I think it's a major game changer. And, I think it's a little bit like, where does the money come from? Comes from the cash machine. Where does the water come from? Oh yeah, let's go up, tuck. And who knows how a car exactly does work? Yeah. So a lot of people don't know a lot about their surroundings and what's happening in the world. And a lot of people also don't care. That's also fine. Yeah, man, it's a free market. And also some people don't have access to education. They don't have access to all the amenities we have in the Western world. Yeah. So there's a great split and a lot of reasons here why people don't get it. And the question, I think, is how can we speed up this process, and spread the word.
I'm sometimes wondering if we are kind of on like a lot of people. Let's stick with your example of the car. A lot of people like very few people really know how a car works from the inside out, and the engine and everything with the electronics going on. But most people kind of know how to drive, at least those who have a driver license and use the cars, which then also goes back to, let's say, WhatsApp. Like, most people have no clue what's going on behind the scenes when you send a message. They just know if, like, there's those two ticks, it's sent from you and the other one received it. And if it's blue and you activate it, he even read it. But they cannot explain what's the network behind those things and the TCP/IP protocol and all the things that go behind the scenes, which to a certain extent, obviously, it's fine because not everyone can know everything. That's kind of basics of how we humans divide labor. But if it comes to money and you have no clue what you're actually holding, and financial energy is such an important part of your being, you should know what makes good money and what are the foundations of good money. And you don't have to be a programmer to understand Bitcoin. you can be you can just know the fundamental of economics, which then leads me now to the question of, like, are we fighting a battle that we cannot win if we try to orange pill people towards self-custodial and all those things? And will, like, being Bitcoin banks and being people that take custody of your Bitcoin be like a very convenient, normal way to do it? Or is it the other way around, where it's now like a password on a username and everyone will have their own keys? I'm still confused of, like, are we achieving the self custody way of people are taking self sovereignty of their own money, or are we ending up with a lot of Bitcoin banks and Bitcoin institutions that then take care of your Bitcoin, and there's only a small hardcore group that is like, oh no, it's my money. They might even be liquidity or like a money provider for other people that don't want to do that and act as like a private bank even. There's some, what do you think about that?
I think it will be a mix, yeah. Especially regarding the Bitcoin banks, I think this will happen for sure. Especially for companies, maybe for institutions who don't want to hold their own keys. Yeah, maybe there's also an insurance for it. There are some things that make life definitely easier. And I think it depends on your own risk appetite. Yeah. And regarding the banks, I mean, it would be back to business for banks. Yeah, like in the good old times. The follow-up question would be, what about paper Bitcoin? Yeah? If the banks hold all the coins, who's going to stop them from tinkering with the books? Like it happened with gold, yeah, on multiple occasions. And
so go ahead.
no, that was basically it. Yeah, there are so many factors to it, and I think, as we talked in the beginning, this is a very slow process, yeah, and we are still very early in the beginning of this process.
Absolutely.
Because, when before Bitcoin, there were no such thing comparable to it. This is the first digital coin that's absolutely secure and cannot be copied. So I think if you take the internet, for example, I think I'm part of quite a special generation here because I grew up before the internet. Then my father was working for a provider, and so we had BTX at home. Yeah, I think I had the first phone, or one of the first we had in Austria. Also the first internet access. And so I basically, when I was, I don't know, back, I don't know, 13, 14 at the time, I was quite fascinated by it. I early on was drawn to the demo scene, hacking and cracking stuff, and always tinkering around and looking for ways, why does this work as it works? And especially with computers, of course, I became a software developer. Yeah. So that's and as you said before, sure, you don't have to know it, yeah, and most of the people also shouldn't have to know it. So that's the one point I would make.
Interesting, yeah.
And yeah, still early, I guess. So, and a lot to do for us.
We have a lot to do, like a lot of things to develop. As a software engineer, is there anything that you would change on Bitcoin, or maybe on the ecosystem of Bitcoin, kind of a thing that is missing for you right now?
I think there are two major things. One is the user experience and the usability. It got very much better the last years. If I think back of 2018, 2019, our first experiments with Lightning. At that time, you had to be a developer to understand what you are doing there. So that got a lot easy. But if you compare it to commercial products, or even, I hate to say it, to some crypto and shitcoin stuff, they do have a better UI sometimes, yeah. And it's people are using it and they don't even think about it if it's crypto. Yeah? And I think with Bitcoin we have to get to this point too. And I think we will get to this point. It's just a matter of time. And as I said, because I'm an optimist, I think this is all complaining on a very high level, yeah, because basically I'm glad that Bitcoin exists, yeah, and I'm glad that about all the projects in the ecosystem, yeah, they're getting more and more, especially since COVID. I think there was, almost an explosion of new projects and new providers and new companies in the ecosystem, and that's quite a cool thing, I think.
Are you still surprised by how quickly we are kind of moving into this institutionalizing of the Bitcoin, with presidents talking about it, so many companies talking about it, and countries, even like Bhutan, that puts a huge amount of their purchasing power to Bitcoin. I mean, El Salvador is also great, but if you compare the relations of how many Bitcoins Bhutan has and how big it is, I think it's like half the population of Vienna, and Vienna is small, and Austria is small, and Bhutan is a whole country. Are you sometimes kind of shocked how quickly this goes, especially if you're like longer term in Bitcoin and you're seeing how far it already came?
It was not surprising, but I think COVID was surely increased this whole things, yeah. Especially with Michael Saylor in the beginning. So he popped basically up of nowhere and became what did they call him? It's the Bitcoin alchemist.
Yes, I saw this. I don't even know what the word means. I'm not that good in English. Alchemist.
It's the same as in German, yeah, you know.
Oh, I also don't know in German. What does it mean?
Alchemist. Oh, those were the people, let's call it the chemics of the early times.
Oh, okay. Interesting. The Alchemist. Yeah, I saw it and I was like, that looks interesting. The Bitcoin Alchemist, but I think they are the first one to call him like that. I think nobody else except Forbes calls him that way. I think in the early days he got the GigaChat description a lot, and now he's like just like going so hard on. But I'm not clever enough to understand what he's doing on the convertible notes and how he's able to raise like $42 billion and buy Bitcoin with that. Like, I had some people on the podcast explaining me that, and I'm still not fully understanding what this really means and how does this work. It's like either it's a money glitch that he found, and he's kind of destroying the fiat system with that, and sucking a lot of financial energy from the fiat system directly to Bitcoin, or there's something going wrong and it will kind of collapse at some point. I don't know. Like I'm just not intelligent enough or not informed enough to judge what MicroStrategy is doing. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I think especially with the last one, Also, it's just stuff I heard from somebody else who might have understood it. I think it's a glitch. Yeah, he found the glitch. He's connecting different investors groups that didn't have access before in that way. And there is a lot of money in the financial markets. And, the more complex a financial product gets, we know what happened in the past with this, yeah, but let's see how this play out.
I mean, if MicroStrategy is successful with all the strategies that they are currently doing, and they're not blowing up, which I'm fairly sure about that actually, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Then this will be a story like we had in 2008. How the film is called, the banking crash movies. The Big Short, yeah, exactly. I think there will be, like, if he catapults his company, which had, what was in the beginning, like a $400 million balance sheet, to now they're raising $42 billion. Like, those scales is just yeah. Like, I have no clue how he got there, but he's a fiat game genius that uses those fiat games to maximize his own and MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holdings, and maybe found a money glitch, which is super interesting. How do you look at the regulations and all the things that are going on in Europe? I think we are spending a lot of time to talk about what's going on in America, and you're now working in a company in Austria and Europe. How do you look at what's going on in Europe with regulations, of Bitcoin adoption and all the things?
I mean, in general, I'm not a friend of regulations. And it's the same thing. It's also with the upcoming MiCA. I mean, us as a Bitcoin only broker, it didn't hit as full as some other exchanges. For example, the delisting of USDT that was happening, and it's a lot of work. Yeah, not only from a technical point of view, also from the administrative side. There are lots of documents to fill out. You're producing paper and words. And sometimes I'm wondering if this is really for the benefit of the consumers, or does this make anything safer? I mean, especially in crypto, if you look around, there are so many scams. Yeah, it's the other side of the medal. For now, we can't change it, so we have to live with it as a licensed company here. Obviously, we're currently working on the MiCA to get it. So it's basically, we have to do it, unfortunately.
I partnered up with Coinfinity. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coinfinity made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coinfinity just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coinfinity timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation. We have a lot of regulation, but all those crypto scams you can still buy on all the exchanges in Europe, where I'm like, okay, you make it harder for the Bitcoin only crowd, and actual scams are still going on. I don't know. I also kind of question the efficiency of those regulations, but I guess that's the European Union's things of regulating things that are going to be developed in America and China. That's like the meme I always have in front of my mind. Do you think we have to get more politically involved as Bitcoiners? Like Bitcoiners are usually like getting away from politics and like, I don't want to do anything with the state, but maybe we have the responsibility to kind of get more active and influence things on a political level.
Yeah, I mean, Nico asked me that when I was at his spot. I think it was 22. And back then, I was really thinking about starting a Bitcoin party in Austria. But yeah, when you start digging into this topic and you are not made to be a politician, no, thank you. I mean, does Bitcoin need political involvement? Absolutely not. Yeah, Bitcoin will go its way. But when, like America, when nation states start building up strategic Bitcoin reserves, I wouldn't be the last one, or that I don't want to be. I wouldn't want to be the last one, yeah, as a state. Also, because we just recently heard of the Czech National Bank and the answer of the ECB and the Lagarde. I mean, and it's basically with every topic like this. If you look, for example, at the AI Act, and how many AI companies do we have in Europe? Yeah? And it's a little bit like the .com bubble, and how many big players do we have in Europe? Like in the likes like Google, Meta, Microsoft, or anything. Yeah, I think the only one I can only recall one. I think Spotify was one of the bigger players. And okay, Bitbanner, but there are a lot of hidden champions, yeah. And also before Bitcoin, I was in the I founded 4 companies altogether, and that was about 10 years. I was working for a big company, and for 10 years I was in the startup scene, and I see a lot of similarities here regarding the groups and entrepreneurs and people who build stuff. Yeah, there is a little bit of overlap. Yeah, because I think if you get into Bitcoin, it's the same drive that you have as a startup founder. Yeah, you want to change something. Yeah, and you want to change something. You want to build new tools. You want to use tools that are actually there and combine it in some other way. Yeah, and you want to drive something forward. Yeah, that's an inner thing. Yeah, and not a lot of people do have this, or do have the chance, yeah, to take this on.
Absolutely. And I also saw what Lagarde says. Like, I just want to play that really quickly because it's like just, I think 30 seconds or 60 seconds or something like that long, for people to see that. It's quite fascinating. And I think it's what represents in the EU in regards to regulation. I just wrote to that because let's first listen to that. I hope you all can hear that. Let's see if my technical skills are working out now.
On this matter that you referred to, and whether reserves of central bank should or could include bitcoins, I think there is a view around the table of the Governing Council, and most likely the General Council as well, that reserves have to be liquid, that reserves have to be secure, that they have to be safe, that they should not be plagued by the suspicion of money laundering or other criminal activities. And as a result, I'm confident that reserves will not enter.
I mean, that's really.
She smiles when she says that.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's like literally liquid, safe, and secure. It's like, what are your first thoughts when you hear this?
When I first heard her say liquid, secure, safe, I thought the next word would be, okay, let's talk about Bitcoin. No, I mean, it's crazy, yeah, because what year do we have? Yeah, money laundering. The most money was laundered using the dollar. Yeah, that's a fact.
Absolutely. And also, this criminal connection to Bitcoin kind of dies out a little bit, and I almost feel like the new narrative, and I hear it from some sides, is now it's unfair that the early Bitcoiners have so much Bitcoin, and so we have to tax the hell out of Bitcoin, so the early Bitcoiners don't have that big advantage. That seems to be kind of the new narrative they're trying to push. At least that's what what I hear from those people.
So that's the successor to we're gonna boil all the water and use up all the energy. So it's bad for the environment. So now there are even more studies. So the usage of renewable energy is rising. So of course you can't use that as an argument anymore, and you need something else. And yeah, I mean, the true topics, they are always good, and for some warmongering and for striving for more or less freedom, yeah, and it's terrorism, and if child are involved, yeah, the same as the what was it called, the Surveillance Act, where all messengers should scan everything that's inside if there is anything illegal included. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I think the Digital Service Act, was that the official name? Yeah, it's definitely. But I also have some hope, to be honest, and maybe you can tell me if you also see that. I see with the EU elections and with what's going on in Europe currently, that the parties that are more critical towards the EU, and also with that the ECP, with that the Digital Service Act, with that all the things, are kind of getting stronger all over Europe. It's not just Austria, it's like all of the European countries. So I do feel like there might be more and more people that say like, we don't want, there's this amazing meme of like, America is doing ChatGPT, China is doing DeepSeek, and European is kind of forbidding that the bottle is going off. I have mostly American listeners. I think I have to search for a picture to show them what crazy things we are doing here in Europe. But like that's kind of like where I see Europe. Do you feel this little hope that the political forces that are against the EU is kind of getting stronger as a symbol of people are waking up, or people are seeing what the EU is doing and also kind of judging it as a bad theme?
Yeah, that absolutely. There was a growing that's growing since all the COVID stuff that happened. Yeah, it's not only against the EU, also against media and other stuff. I think for some or many people, this was quite a wake-up moment there. And I mean, there are always two sides, and I think the whole thing, also society, similar to Bitcoin, works in cycles. Yeah, that's ever evolving thing. And I mean, compared to the EU, I think in America, the whole, what they call the woke factor was way bigger than here in Europe. And it's the same, it swung to the other side. I think it's now on the way to swing back. And that's yeah, that's going on for some time, because we, as a human species, we are not able to stay on the middle path.
I actually found it. That's the amazing meme that's going on. It's kind of hilarious. and for those from America or from Canada that don't know what we're doing with those bottles, it's now a law that those bottle, how are they called? closers, bottlenecks, whatever, they are not allowed to fall off the bottle in order to save our planet. That's basically it. But yeah, let's come back to like Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is doing for positive in the world. Let's focus on the good things. How did Bitcoin influence your life, and what did Bitcoin do for you?
The TLDR would be Bitcoin fixed me. No, back then I was working, or I founded a company, and I was right inside the burnout. And Bitcoin gave me some focus. Over the years, I had multiple touch points with Bitcoin. I think like many people did. And the first few were, yeah, this cannot work. That's like the Linden dollar, or it's all have been tried already. eCash, nothing worked out. And then came Bitcoin, and the major effect I had was when I got over proof of work, and when I understood how it really worked. And as I said, because I'm a very big optimist, I think it will take some time, but we're going to get there. And the fixing part was because I had a new topic where I could dive in. And I think it was basically like Andreas Antonopoulos said it, yeah, hours and hours a day, reading, watching Antonopoulos videos, and diving into the topic, looking at the source code, building a Bitcoin as a project, looking at the consensus algorithm, trying to find anything inside the code where I could say, this cannot work. And I'm still trying to find an error in Bitcoin, yeah. But until now, I did, yeah. So that's a good thing. And also the other topics it brought back for me, yeah. So because I was working a very lot, yeah, I didn't have time to read, or I disregarded my own hobbies. And so now, or at least back then, Bitcoin became my new hobby, and with it all the topics that evolve around here. Also aside the technology, economics, philosophy, and everything you can find it in there for yourself.
So Bitcoin kind of brought back the life part of your human being.
Yeah, so to say. It showed me that there are other things aside work too. Yeah.
And it also allows you to do that if you save in Bitcoin. You have the financial reward in there. You save in a monetary system that all of a sudden rewards being hardworking, being disciplined, being good, because then all of a sudden you are building this financial buffer for yourself where you can allow yourself to take also good decisions. If you are always on zero money and you're struggling to pay bills, obviously you don't have a lot of time to research about diet and health and what money is actually. You should do this still, but it's not as easy as you would have then with Bitcoin. When you do something and you can accumulate something, you get that hope back. That's why I think it's brilliant that hope.com is linking to Bitcoin, that we have that kind of like vision of, if I save that amount, it's accumulating, and it gives me some security, and I'm not depending on a job or like a state or anything else. It makes you more self-sovereign. I see that as the biggest change what happened. My podcast started out as not at the Robin Seyr podcast. It started out at the Bitcoin path. And the first few episodes, I always asked like, how did Bitcoin change you? This was kind of the direction what my path was, what my podcast was about in the beginning. It got boring fast because it was a lot of the same stories. That's why I changed the strategy a little bit, but it's super fascinating how technology tool that is used as money or is money changes people's lives with diet and sports. It's kind of fascinating to see that going on. How was it for you to discover Bitcoin that in the early phase where there were no Bitcoin exchanges that make it super easy, a lot of hardware wallets, a lot of services, and a lot of technologies around it, where you had to figure out a lot of the stuff yourself and probably also made a lot of mistakes along the way?
Yeah, one time I tried to buy Bitcoin, and I think it was on Mt. Gox, and I didn't in the end. It was quite a mistake. I still bite my own ass for this, but it looked spooky, it looked scammy, and I don't know. And then I think it was a few months, half a year before Mt. Gox was hacked. So that was the confirmation. I knew it then. That's not going to work out. But the tools got better, and I think the idea is basically too good to go away, And if you get Bitcoin, I mean, nobody gets Bitcoin totally, but if you understood the basic principles, then everything else is gone, because this is such an eye opener, Can give yourself a facepalm saying, "Oh my, why didn't I think about it?" And as I said before, the main question: what is money? Why do we need money as a society? I mean, that's also quite an interesting topic for me as an old Star Trek fan. I'm a Trekkie. And thinking about all the stuff going on with robotics and artificial intelligence. And do we reach a point where there is no need for anyone to work anymore? Because we harvest so much energy that we do have a replicator for food, for luxury items, everything you want to need. What scarce items are left? I mean, that's obviously land, but if Elon brings us to Mars, not even that. And there are some books on the topic of moneyless society. That's always an idea that I find quite fascinating. Maybe I think Bitcoin could be the tool to get us there. Maybe not. I don't know. That's quite some part science fiction. We will see it when we get there. But I think it's also an interesting thought to think about. How could a society look without any money? What is the value and our value that we exchange with money? And what must the circumstances be that we don't need it anymore?
I mean, if we live in such a big abundance, and I think there will always be money. I think there will always be kind of a scoring system. But I talked with Luke Preuss around that topic. It's super fascinating. When you look back in history, the poorest, like a middle, like someone that is now in the middle range of wealth, is doing so much better and can do so much more than the wealthiest person for like 100 or 200 years ago. When you think about most of people that are listening here could buy plane tickets tomorrow to another country and fly there, get food served there, and can phone with someone on the other side of the planet, send money around. Like all those things are like science fictions like 100 years ago. And not even the richest person alive could do that. So like we're coming to the point, I think, where the lowest class still can live quite nicely. And we're seeing the beginnings of that. We're not there yet. Like we have so much problems in the world that we are not even close to there. But small examples, like, okay, that's maybe a stupid example, but it's on top of my mind because it came today. We got a robot vacuum cleaner today. And it's quite a task of like every week going around and doing all the corners and stuff like that. And then just being able to press a button and do something that you enjoy. You can watch TV, you can work on an art project, you can paint the painting, you can write a book in that time, where you otherwise would have vacuumed your floor. That is amazing. And then if you see what Tesla and Google is doing with self-driving, I tested the newest Tesla in December in Miami, and this was driving me 1 hour around Miami, in city, on the highway, everywhere, and I didn't even touch the wheel. It was spooky for me because this thing is really driving itself. All those videos I thought are fake news that I saw on Twitter, they are actually real. Like this thing drives itself completely, and it drives better than me. I want to add that maybe I'm a bad driver, but I felt more secure having the autopilot of Tesla on than driving myself, because it's the first time that I drove in America. And when you see all those developments, it's like at some point, we humans don't really need to do anything to have the basic needs like shelter, food, drinks, and getting around covered. But even on top of that, I think we will still have some scoreboard, which probably will be money, which probably will be Bitcoin, like who has the nicer robot and who has the nicer Tesla. I think this is always a society thing, but it's an interesting thought about what comes if AI, robotics, and Bitcoin comes together, and what is the future looking like in 200 years. It's obviously I don't have the answer to that, but it's really fun to think about that.
Yeah, because you just mentioned it, especially with artificial intelligence, that's for me a full circle, so to say, personally. I mean, I learned programming with BASIC, and then soon after with assembler and C. So I talked the language of the machines to talk to the machine. And now 30 years later, the machine is talking to me in my language, which is quite an experience, And also, like the Tesla and some other stuff, I only knew from science fiction books or science fiction movies. They're getting real step by step. It's crazy to watch, and especially it's getting faster, from year to year. And with artificial intelligence, when they start talking to each other, training each other, and even using money. I mean, what better money would there be than a Lightning integration for those artificial intelligences?
Absolutely, it's crazy. I just remembered like 8-9 years ago in HTL. Probably nobody knows in the audience what this is, but it's a school form in Austria. 8-9 years ago in school, basically, we discussed if self-driving cars will ever be a reality, because then Tesla was kind of starting to get the talks on that. And just 8-9 years later, I'm sitting in a car that actually drives itself. I'm still not allowed to turn my seat around and play PlayStation, but it's already doing the job. It's just like the next step of like, let's get the regulatory framework around that, so you can do that and send your car home, or like you can buy a car, use it when you need it. If you don't need it, you rent it out to other people, so you make money with your car. Like those are weird concepts. Or maybe you don't even have to have the car, because it's cheaper just to pay for that small distance you have to carry, because now you don't have to pay the human being sitting in there, because the human being driving the car in the Uber, that's the most the most expensive part of the Uber experience. If you delete him, it's quite cheap actually, and probably cheaper than driving now around with your own car, because that's costing a lot of money too. It's just fascinating to think about that, but also pure speculation. I think just we're going in that direction. No clue how it will look like. It'll be fun to see.
But I think the funny part is no crazy idea is off the table. Anything can happen. I mean, a small example for me, because you mentioned school, also at, I think it was second or third class HTL, I was making during school, I was making a practicum at the Fraunhofer Institute, and they were building an MP3 player. And Then I did a project in class and explaining how compression algorithms work. And most of, even the professors, they laughed. Haha, why do we need music on our hard disks? Yeah. Well, I think this was 1995 or 1996, so that's that year around. Nobody could imagine. And then came the iPod, or the MP3 itself. Yeah, and there are a lot of examples. Yeah, especially in technology, and it's getting faster every day. And we're crazy. I think the next years will be crazy. The craziest anyone had witnessed.
It's all, I always come back to what a time to be alive. The next coming years, the next 5-10 years will be really cool. By the way, living in the future, are you already spending Bitcoin? Coming back to the topic of medium exchange, are you personally, or let's ask it the other way, how far on the Bitcoin standard are you already living?
It depends. A few years back, I was paying everything in Bitcoin that was possible to pay. I was using it everywhere. But nowadays, I'm not, or at least this year and last year, when you're not out much, I'm focusing on my work and focusing on myself. And basically, I'm just holding, because I don't have the possibility anywhere around me. Yeah. So it's not possible to go to a shop and pay there with Bitcoin. Yeah.
Absolutely. You always need those workarounds of like, you have maybe a debit card where there's like Lightning wallet behind it where you can spend it, or you have a credit card that you can pay once a month with Bitcoin, and all those workarounds that you can have that I'm not in the situation that I need, because my income is now mostly in Bitcoin. My fiat income is stays the same, and the Bitcoin income is the bigger part now. So I have to quote unquote spend Bitcoin, which means sell to fiat and directly spend it. And I'm just trying to extend the period of holding Bitcoin to as long as possible, to spend it the latest possible point. And that's kind of, maybe that's already a kind of a form of a Bitcoin standard. If you just have the last part of the fiat standard still in the way, it's kind of like driving a self-driving car, but you still have to sit there and pretend to drive. And it's like using Bitcoin as payments, but like the last step, literally the last step is not in Bitcoin. It's like Lightning converted to fiat and then pay with MasterCard or whatever. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
If you could already pay that in Bitcoin, would be amazing. Yeah, really cool. I ask each and every one of my guests one question. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
I would say one of my major learnings, as also a big fan of the Stoics, focus on what you control and live more, love more, and keep studying Bitcoin.
Amazing. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is. And your question from a previous guest is one that we maybe had already a little bit in there. But what does Bitcoin change in the world?
Bitcoin will change society to be more fair, hopefully.
More fair in the first second I understood fiat.
No.
More fair, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, Thomas, for being on the show. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
You can find me on X, handle Fichte42. For the English-speaking audience, Fichte is my nickname. It's the German word for spruce. Yeah, it's the kind of tree because I'm above 2 meters big.
It'd be fun to have an in-person podcast because I'm almost 2 meters.
Yeah, we should do one with Chris from Seyr.
Oh yes, he's one of the few that was already 2 times on the podcast. Chris, he is always fun to have on the podcast also. Yeah, it would be fun. Three guys.
Maybe do a street ball game sometime.
I'm not good. I'm not that good with balls. Unfortunately. But yeah, thank you so much, Thomas, for being on the show. For the people that didn't understand the handle, it's in the description, or if you're on Twitter directly above you, and you can directly click on it and you get to Twitter or X. I'm still not used to calling it X. I'm envy. I'm always saying Twitter. But thank you so much, Thomas, for being on. Thank you so much also for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.